You are live. Welcome to the show. Shit, it's been a minute. It's been a minute, bro. Yo, it's been a minute, bro. Oh no, I guess it's been a minute, something like that. You know what I'm saying? Something like that, you know what I'm saying? It is Wednesday, August 26th, 2026. And NVIDIA earnings just came out. If you're paying attention to the stock market, stock jumped after hour, couple of percent. That's not what we're talking about today. We are talking about the 2016 election, the election that changed America. It will go down in the history books, depending on what history book you read, of course. Now, you might not say, you might say, or you might think that the presidential election is important. You might say, I don't have to vote. My state is already red. My state is already blue. My vote isn't going to change anything. And depending on where you live, you might have a point about the Electoral College. But the 2016 election shows how relatively small the margin can be that can redirect an entire country for decades. Now, there's already been many postmortems that have been conducted on this, but I spoke to one of my really good friends about this, and he is entrenched in politics. And he said, maybe you should report back on this because you got to look at the margins here and why, who won what. Now, personally, I live in New York and I vote because I believe it is my civic duty. There has been a lot of sacrifice. There has been a lot of chance involved in the fact that I was given the opportunities that I had to not only work in the field that I do, but garner and earn the money that I did. And I owe it to someone. And that's why I vote. Do I actually like voting? No, not necessarily. And in a state that's this blue, right? New York is blue. Although I'm right down the middle. Maybe it really depends who it is, but I'm right down the middle. I will vote for a red candidate. I will vote for a blue candidate. I will vote for a Green Party candidate. But here's the thing. You just don't know enough. You know why? Because you're busy living your life. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing the show. I'm working. I'm going to the gym. I'm seeing my friends and family. I'm walking the dog. I'm doing whatever the hell I got to do. So I'm really not interested in your politics. I'm very interested, but then again, I do the show. If I wasn't doing the show, yeah, I would read about it, but does that mean I'm going to actually go on your website and read through your entire agenda? I mean, for those of you out there that voted for Barack Obama, which I did you actually know exactly what he was going to do? And even if you knew exactly what he was going to do, did you actually think that it was going to transcend itself, the words on paper, I mean, to the actual policy and legislation once he got into office? How could you possibly know? It's all theory, right? So anybody that's going to sit there and say, with conviction, this is the candidate that we need, is totally wrong. Anybody that voted for Trump, voted for one thing, definitely got another. No matter how you cut it, because there are going to be certain aspects of how he governs that you don't agree with, that you probably didn't sign up for. So, Donald Trump in 2016 actually lost the national popular vote by almost 2.9 million votes. Let's call it 3 million. But he won Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania by fewer than 78,000 votes combined. Those 78,000 votes helped produce 3 Supreme Court justices, more than 200 additional federal judges, he completely changed the Republican Party and transformed American law that could potentially outlive every person who voted in that election. That's how much of a generational impact Donald Trump and the 2016 election is going to have. And honestly, that's why I don't understand Trump's obsession with attaching his name to buildings and plazas and institutions. I mean, your legacy will cement itself. If you do good and you govern with integrity, with honor, then we will remember you. He doesn't need his name on the Kennedy Center to confirm anything. His name is already engraved in American history, the 45th and the 47th president. But more importantly, Donald Trump changed America arguably more than any president in modern day history. Now, if you support him, you probably think he saved America, or at least began saving it. I don't think any one leader has the ability to do that. And if you oppose him, you probably think he caused enormous damage. But the impact itself is undeniable. It completely changed where we are on the global stage as far as how we're viewed internationally, the policies that we've instilled domestically, and the overall dynamic, the political dynamic here in this country has dramatically changed. I don't know if it was for the better or for the worse. Maybe it's a means to an end. We don't know. History will tell that story. But the impact that he had, it almost feels insurmountable. He has truly been an unprecedented actor in the White House, completely ignoring Congress, taking action, both foreign and domestic, any way he sees fit. He has certainly been authoritarian. And then the bedrock, which are the judges, Trump appointing Neil Gorsuch in 2017, Brett Kavanaugh in 2018, and Amy Coney Barrett in 2020. Those appointments themselves created a 6-3 conservative Supreme Court majority. That court overturned Roe v. Wade, no abortions, designated to the state level, expanded gun carrying rights, ended race-conscious admissions at most universities. Affirmative action went out the door, along with diversity, equity, and inclusion practices. And that goes for all of corporate. He reduced the number and the power of federal agencies and granted presidents broad criminal immunity for actions taken through their official authority. Remember, he cannot be audited for any of his past tax returns. Now, of course, those changes did not end when Trump's first term ended. The president serves for only 4 years, in his case 8, but of course, a Supreme Court justice can serve for 30 or even 40 years. Trump also had 234 Article 3 judges confirmed during his first term, reshaping the lower federal courts that decide thousands of cases the Supreme Court will never hear. So foundationally, he's had a huge impact on the law of the land. And of course, this wasn't accomplished by Trump alone. Republicans maintained control of the Senate in 2016, giving Trump the votes necessary to confirm his nominees. But that's why the presidency matters. That's why the Senate matters. That's why your governor, your mayor, your governor is the CEO of your state, state legislature, district attorneys, local judges, they all matter. Who's in power, who's in control, who says how things go matter. Because different offices control different parts of your life. And at the lowest level, those are the people that you're closest proximity to, the state senators, the assembly people. They're the ones that are supposed to hear what you're saying, essentially take in the voice of the citizen and translate that back to the officials who are higher up, the mayors, the governors, the senators. That's how it's supposed to work. And that's why your vote ultimately does matter. Do I think casting a vote is frivolous? I've actually heard an argument that casting a vote is selfish because it's essentially trying to impose your view on the world for everyone else. Interesting argument, but in my opinion, it has no legs. Do I think everyone should vote? Yes. Do I think everyone's vote matters? Yes. Even if you're in a predominantly blue or red state, you should cast that vote because, I mean, that was just the courts, the judges, the impact that he had on law and even lawyers. That was just the judicial branch. Trump also permanently reduced the corporate tax rate from 35% to 21%. And depending on where you stand on taxing the rich, do you really want to give a company like Apple or any other major corporation, Nvidia, Google, Meta, do you want to give them 14% revenue? Depends on how you look at it. He withdrew the United States from the Iran nuclear agreement and the Paris Climate Accord, which probably led to the events in his second term for attacking Iran. As far as climate change is concerned in this country, I don't think our government even cares about it anymore. I think we probably have to wait for a Democrat to take office before we can begin speaking about it again. He imposed tariffs on China multiple times. He renegotiated the North American Free Trade Agreement, called it the MCTA. I think I have that wrong. Renamed it the USMCA, which is the Canada, Mexico, United States Agreement, which is the US, Mexico, Canada Agreement, which he's violating right now. He moved the American embassy in Israel to Jerusalem and negotiated the Abraham Accords. Along the way, he reshaped immigration policy, which you're seeing unfold right in front of your eyes today with ICE. And he transformed the Republican Party around nationalism, ultra-nationalism, if you will, super patriotism, protectionism, more tariffs, making sure that we're making and manufacturing our goods here. We're importing less. We don't want a trade deficit. And probably most importantly, he instilled this distrust of the political establishment. I think he undermined any credibility that any media company has or the government itself. Now, the Republican Party before 2016 was the party of George W. Bush, John McCain, Mitt Romney, but Trump defeated that version of the party. Even after losing in 2020, refusing to accept the result, and leaving office after January 6th, he retained control of the Republican Party and returned to the White House 4 years later. And anyone who opposed him either lost out in the general election or in the primaries, or has had their reputation beaten so much to a pulp that they can't garner any fundraising. That's how much of an impact Donald Trump has had. You either align yourself with him on the red side, or you almost stand no chance. Anyone in the Republican Party today, as it stands, cannot have their own opinion that doesn't align with Donald Trump. If you do, it's career suicide. The 2016 election was not a 4-year interruption. It was an inflection point. It changed the trajectory of the country. And discussing the impact of a presidency also forces us to confront something much bigger. Every country is shaped by decisions about power, sacrifice, and who is forced to pay the cost. Charlie Kirk once argued that preserving the Second Amendment was worth the cost of some gun deaths every year. You can agree or disagree with him, but that statement reveals a governing calculation. What cost are we willing to accept to preserve something we value? American history is filled with those calculations, except the people receiving the benefits were often not the people paying the price. The United States has created extraordinary wealth, security, and opportunity, and most of us benefit from that. Whether we take advantage of it or not is another issue. But if you were born here, your life was shaped by those advantages before you were old enough to even understand them. Even the freedom to stand here and call the United States evil is protected by the system you are criticizing. If you had been born somewhere else, you might not have the same economic opportunities. You certainly wouldn't have the same political rights. And you'd be lucky to even begin to criticize your government publicly. But those benefits did not appear without enormous human costs. That's why when I hear people don't like the military because they think that the United States is being imperialist or being a bully, and I agree. We do rule with a big stick for the most part. You saw Barack Obama be a little bit more compassionate. George Bush went into Afghanistan and Iraq. Donald Trump is now attacking Iran. Do we actually want to see our country invade another? Or impose sanctions so tough, so extreme, that we choke off the resources to the people who actually matter? Do you want your fellow Iranian, your fellow global citizen to suffer? For what? What do you have personally against someone living in Iran? or someone living in Somalia or Indonesia or Brazil. These tariffs are acts of war. And yes, we need to protect our country and make sure that we preserve a decent quality of life for our citizens. But at what cost? Is it always America first? Is it always America only? Because we have to remember that Native Americans were killed. They were displaced. They were deceived out of their land. Enslaved Black people had their labor, freedom, and lives stolen to generate wealth for others. Have we forgotten this? American corporations and government power have influenced weaker countries. They have extracted their resources. They have shaped trade agreements and intervened around the world to protect American interests. It has always been America first. It has always been us above everyone else. Lest we forget, we're all human. We inherited the benefits of that history, whether we personally asked for them or not. We also inherited a responsibility to understand who paid for those benefits. It's not lost on me that everything that I have seen, I have gotten to experience, the fact that I was able to travel, all of the different corporations that I worked for, it's not lost on me that I was extremely lucky in my life, but there was also a tremendous amount of sacrifice, a tremendous amount of marginalization, of pillaging, of taking. Now, does that mean that I'm taking my life for granted because I don't recognize something like that? No. It doesn't mean that every American achievement is evil. And it doesn't mean that historical injustice should be used to excuse every modern failure. It means national greatness and national wrongdoing can exist in the same history. When Donald Trump stands up there and denies any wrongdoing whatsoever in American history, and insofar that he does it himself, it's ridiculous. Do you want to raise your children in that manner? Of course not. You want your children to be honest and act with integrity and some type of altruism, right? And care about their fellow man, American or not. The moral test is whether we acknowledge these costs, whether we choose to repair what we can, and stop demanding that the same people continue paying it. They tend to say that history repeats itself. It's one of the oldest expressions in the book. But once we recognize that history is repeating itself, I don't know, like a genocide in Gaza or marginalization of Black people and minorities in this country, when do we stand up and say, whoa, 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 we've been down this path before? It's on us, the people, to recognize that, but it's certainly on our leadership to make sure that we don't make the same mistakes. And that brings us back to elections. When we elect a president, we are choosing more than a personality or a political party. We are choosing who receives power, which rights receive protection, which harms the government will tolerate and whose suffering will be considered an acceptable cost. That is what you are voting for. That decision requires more than automatically voting red or blue. We should be examining people's judgment, competence, honesty, and moral compass before trusting them with power over our rights. They are in control of our money, our safety, and our military. You don't have to hate Trump to recognize his impact. The world feels it. You don't have to support Trump to admit that he changed America. And you certainly don't have to believe your preferred candidate is perfect to understand that refusing to choose is still a decision. Fewer than 78,000 votes across 3 states helped redirect the country for decades. That is how impactful the 2016 election was. So yes, presidential elections matter. Senate elections matter. State and local elections matter. The 2016 election did not simply determine who occupied the White House for 4 years. You got to take that out of your head. We changed the trajectory of our history. We changed the trajectory of America. All right, next topic. Ow, 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 ow. All right, we're going to get, so you're going to like this story, I think. Okay. Now, I have been reading, actually, I just finished a book on the Yakuza. It's probably one of the best books ever written on the Yakuza. Super interesting. It goes into their entire history, all of their dealings worldwide across countries and continents. And there was one story that stood out, and I'm going to tell it to you. It is about the Kim kidnapping. On August 8th, 1973, South Korean intelligence agents kidnapped the man who would one day become president from a hotel in the middle of Tokyo. His name was Kim Dae-jung. 2 years earlier, Kim had challenged South Korea's authoritarian president, Park Chung-hee, in the 1971 election. Despite government interference, Kim received about 45% of the vote, losing to Park by roughly 900,000 votes. Then, in 1972, Park suspended the constitution, imposed martial law, and introduced a new system that effectively allowed him to remain president indefinitely. Kim was in Japan at the time when this happened. He remained abroad and organized opposition to Park's government. Friends warned him that people were searching for him, so he changed hotels frequently and sometimes registered under false names. But on August 8th, they found him. Kim had just finished a meeting inside Tokyo's Grand Palace Hotel. As he stepped into the hallway, six men surrounded him and dragged him into an empty room. They beat him, drugged him, blindfolded him, and bound his hands and feet. The kidnappers then took him through the hotel's basement, forced him into a waiting car, and drove him for approximately 5 hours toward Osaka. Near Osaka, they stopped and wrapped tape around his hands, feet, and face, leaving only enough space around his nose for him to breathe. Kim was taken to the coast, placed aboard a small motorboat, and transferred to a larger vessel heading towards South Korea. That was when he realized this was not simply a kidnapping. Still blindfolded, Kim felt heavy weights being tied to his wrists and ankles. He could hear the men discussing how to make sure his body never returned to the surface. Kim was a devout Catholic. Before believing he was about to be thrown into the sea, He began saying his final prayers. Then an aircraft appeared overhead. Kim later recalled that it circled the vessel several times, creating confusion among his captors. The men held a heated discussion, removed the weights, and abandoned the apparent plan to kill him. What happened behind the scenes is still not completely clear. U.S. Ambassador Philip Habib and other American diplomats had learned that South Korean intelligence was probably responsible. Habib confronted the Park government and reportedly warned that Kim had to be returned alive. Japanese authorities were also searching for Kim. Some accounts identified the aircraft as a Japanese patrol plane tracking the vessel. But the aircraft's precise identity and its direct role in saving Kim have never been conclusively established. What is clear is that Kim was not freed at sea. His captors transported him into South Korea, drove him towards Seoul, and held him for several more days. On August 13th, 5 days and approximately 129 hours after he disappeared, Kim was released near his home in Seoul, battered but alive. Then the South Korean government placed the kidnapping victim under house arrest. Investigators in Japan quickly found evidence connecting the operation to the Korean Central Intelligence Agency, and a fingerprint belonging to Kim Dong-woon, an official at the South Korean embassy, was discovered at the hotel. One of the vehicles used in the operation was also traced to the South Korean vice consulate. South Korea denied responsibility for more than 3 decades, but in 2007, the country's National Intelligence Service officially acknowledged that its predecessor, the KCIA, had carried out the kidnapping. Investigators concluded that President Park probably gave at least tacit approval, although they could not prove that Park personally ordered Kim's kidnapping or murder. Kim continued to face imprisonment, house arrest, and in 1980, even a death sentence, but he survived all of it. And in December 1997, 24 years after the kidnapping, Kim Dae-jung was elected president of South Korea. He took office in February 1998. In 2000, he received the Nobel Peace Prize for his work for democracy, human rights, and reconciliation within North Korea. So there were American, Korean, and Japanese officials involved. The South Korean government kidnapped him, tied weights to his body, and apparently prepared to erase him from history. Instead, Kim Dae-jung became president. And in the midst of all of this, the Yakuza was gravely involved. They may have been at the center of the kidnapping. And that's what makes this story so interesting. Not only did he survive being kidnapped, beaten, and maybe his death, and maybe seconds away from his death, he went on to win the Nobel Peace Prize. And ultimately became president of South Korea. That's Kim Dae-jung, and this was in 1973. So just an incredible story. I thought I'd share it with everyone. All right. Next topic. Trump and Canada's trade deal collapses. How?
Imagine being able to build anything just by thinking about it. Meet Base 44, and workers could rely.
Our goal has always been to get the best deal for Canadians, never a deal at any price or on any time frame. Last month, when the United States announced another round of unjustified tariffs, I gave our negotiating team a new mandate to seek a fair deal negotiated in good faith. Because I believe that people on the ground, on both sides of our border, want this relationship to work. The bonds between Canadians and Americans are long, and they remain strong. A mutually beneficial trade agreement is possible, one that respects our sovereignty, one that builds on our complementary strengths, one that lowers costs for families on both sides of the border, one that creates good jobs for our workers.
All right, we got to break this all down, right? Because you can't just be American and just say, screw Canada, our neighbors in the north, and they stink, and whatever Trump says. Let's try to understand what's happening here. The trade fight between the United States and Canada is certainly getting worse, and as of today, the two countries are not even negotiating. Trump told Glenn Beck, "It's time to teach Canada you can't do this anymore." The United States has now imposed tariffs mostly at 50% on roughly $20 billion in Canadian products, including dairy, furniture, clothing, cement, and sporting equipment. Canada is responding on September 8th with matching tariffs of 15%, 25%, or 50% on approximately $20 billion in American goods, dollar for dollar. That includes steel, dairy, appliances, electronics, agricultural equipment, seafood, furniture, and clothing. Saskatchewan also announced a separate 50% tariff on American alcohol. But remember, $20 billion is the value of the goods being targeted. It's not $20 billion in taxes being collected. So how did they get here? The two sides were reportedly close to an agreement that would have reduced American tariffs on Canadian cars and light trucks from 25% to 15%. It also could have reduced tariffs on steel and aluminum and returned American alcohol to Canadian liquor stores. Then the terms changed. Canada wanted the vehicle relief to include medium and heavy-duty trucks, include Chevrolet Silverado, heavy-duty trucks including Chevrolet Silverados, which are heavy-duty trucks manufactured in Ontario. The United States refused. Canada also says Washington added restrictions involving French language requirements and Canada's ability to negotiate trade agreements with other countries. Trump was asked whether he changed the agreement at the last minute and responded, "That sounds like me." So Canada walked away. What do you expect from them? Canada can't negotiate trade agreements with other countries? That's preposterous. The United States says Canada rejected a generous agreement and will receive a worse offer if it returns. There are currently no open negotiating channels. To add insult to injury, now Trump says that on January 1st, 2027, tariffs on all Canadian cars, trucks, automotive parts, and steel will rise to 50%. And that's the much larger threat here. Canada produced approximately 1.2 million vehicles last year, and Canadian-built vehicles represented around 6% of American vehicle sales. About 17% of Chevrolet Silverado production is in Canada, while Canada is the only country producing the Chrysler Pacifica. Toyota and Honda account for more than 3/4 of Canadian vehicle production.
Canada has always worked towards these goals, even while America's attention and dedication to them have wavered. We've consistently proposed long-term partnerships, while America has often pursued short-term transactions. The gap between partnership and competitor, unfortunately, has remained too wide in recent days. So last evening, I instructed our negotiators to return to Ottawa. We cannot accept what they've offered, and we will not give what they've asked.
I'm not going to be mad at one politician refusing or fighting back when it comes to Trump. I mean, Trump is as boisterous as they come. He's as aggressive a president that we've seen. You're going to be upset when someone pushes back? Should Canada have accepted a 15% tariff on cars and light trucks? Protected most of its auto industry and continue negotiating over larger trucks? Or would accepting an agreement that Washington could rewrite at the last minute have encouraged Trump to demand even more? Because remember, most of this stuff is written in pencil. Meaning on the American side, we usually don't live up to the deal. That's textbook Donald Trump, asking for the moon, getting far less, but then even changing that at the last minute. On the American side, if the objective is to protect American automakers, why would you place a 50% tariff on Canadian parts used inside American factories while European and Asian vehicle imports face only 15%? Does that make any sense? It seems like this is a personal vendetta with Canada. Canada depends on the United States for roughly 70% of its exports, and the United States knows that. One economist estimates these latest tariffs alone could eventually cost Canada 90,000 jobs. And Canada knows that they cannot win a prolonged economic war against an economy 13 times its size. But American consumers and manufacturers will also pay part of the cost. That's what tariffs are. They're taxes on consumers. But we've seen this before. Is January 1st a real deadline? The market doesn't seem to care. Or maybe Trump is just creating 4 more months of pressure to force Canada back into negotiations. All right, next topic. Money, 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 me, 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 me. Money, 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 money. That's what Trump wants, right? Money, 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 money. President Trump. His investment accounts reported 1,051 transactions in June, 576 purchases, and 475 sales. Altogether, the reported value was approximately $78 million. Altogether, the reported value was approximately $78 to $263 million. That range is so wide because financial disclosures do not provide exact amounts. Every transaction is placed into a bracket, like 15,000 to 50,000, 500,000 to 1 million, or 1 million to 5 million. But since he's a multi-billionaire, let's use the upper end of that estimate, 263 million. Here were the largest individual stock purchases. Trump's account bought Home Depot 8 separate times, totaling approximately $8 million. He also bought Fidelity National Information Services 3 times, totaling $5.27 million. He bought MasterCard twice, totaling $5.25 million. They bought Cintas, the uniform maker, 3 times, totaling approximately $5.12 million. He purchased Berkshire Hathaway, about $5 million. And he bought Visa, also about $5 million. Money, 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 money. Donald Trump, Donald Trump. You want that money? You want to make that money? Other substantial purchases included Abbott Laboratories, approximately $1.25 million. Adobe, about $1 million. Accenture, $1 million. Republic Services, $1 million. Moody's, another $1 million. And T-Mobile, $1 million. Now, what does that tell you as an investor? Well, if the president says buy stocks, you buy stocks. And if you get disclosures on what he's eyeing, like if he's buying Home Depot 8 separate times, in and out, I was looking at Home Depot myself. Makes me kind of validate it. MasterCard, Cintas, Berkshire Hathaway. He talks to all these CEOs. He has tremendous influence. He knows what's going on. There is no one who has better information on where stocks are going other than the president of the United States, including this president, this precise president. He knows how to make money, making that money. And this is ridiculous, y'all. You don't think this is crazy? If you really want to be the president of the United States, the last thing on your mind should be enriching yourself, right? But we don't care about that, right? We care about the money. All right, now let's look at the largest stock sales. His account sold Meta for $5 million. They sold Fiserv 4 times, totaling $1.32 million. He sold Netflix 4 times, totaling $1.25 million. Sold CME Group twice, totaling $1.25 million. He sold McDonald's 3 times, $1.12 million. O'Reilly Automotive 4 times, $1 million. S&P Global 3 times, $1 million. Motorola Solutions twice, $1 million. And $1 million each of AT&T, Marsh, Palantir, and Roper Technologies. What do you think about that? Look at that portfolio. 270 million across all of these stocks. Now, of course, he doesn't have the time to do this. He has someone managing his account. But number one, the stock market is directionally bullish. It's going to go directionally up, right? That's why you never short the market. I don't care who you are or what you say or what you know. You don't short the market. But then you're the president of the United States. So you have probably some, inside information, right? That extra little, oomph, that's kind of your edge. And then on top of that, you're Donald Trump and you don't give a shit about nothing. So you know where stocks are going. Hey, you talk to the McDonald's CEO, hey, how are things going over there, That's what we call asymmetrical information. Now, the largest single transaction was not an individual stock. Money, 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 money. Trump stock watch, Trump stock watch, Trump stock watch. The account sold $25 million of the Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF. They also sold 10 million of the Vanguard Short-Term Bond ETF. On the buying side, they purchased $5 million of the Spider S&P 500 ETF, which we all should be buying. Buy the S&P 500, the Technology Select Sector ETF, the Industrial Select Sector ETF, the iShares US Treasury Bond ETF, the iShares International Treasury Bond ETF, and the iShares Commodities ETF. Damn! There was also a newly confirmed purchase involving Elon Musk. Trump's accounts bought $50,000 of SpaceX on June 23rd, 11 days after SpaceX completed its IPO. Now, SpaceX is a major military and federal contractor. It also requires regulatory approval for launches, and Trump recently directed his administration to increase commercial space launches substantially. Conflict of interest? Maybe, I don't know. You got to be stupid to not see a conflict of interest there, specifically with SpaceX. Now, even if Trump did not personally select SpaceX, are you comfortable with the president owning a government contractor whose business his administration directly affects? Hey, launch more flights, more commercial space flights. Come on, come on, come on, come on. More federal dollars, buy SpaceX. The accounts also moved in and out of several politically sensitive companies. Trump stock trades, Stump trades. They made 3 Palantir purchases totaling. He made 3 Palantir purchases totaling approximately $280,000, but also sold approximately $1 million of Palantir plus another small sale. He bought $250,000 of Raytheon RTX. He sold a smaller Northrop Grumman position. They sold approximately $300,000 of Coinbase and bought another $100,000. And of course, the White House says that Trump did not select or direct any of these transactions. It says independent financial institutions manage the portfolio using computer-based models designed to replicate recognized indexes. Neither Trump nor his family, according to the White House, can choose the investments or determine when they are traded. But the investments still belong to Trump. He's still one of the most powerful people in the world. And the Donald J. Trump Revocable Trust, you know who that's managed by? His son, Donald Trump Jr. Come on now. I mean, you just want to believe that this guy's just making money with dumb luck? Come on. Do some math here. The newest filing also contains a transparency problem. 694 of the 1,051 June transactions were marked as filed late. Trump's disclosure record now stands at 8,940 reported transactions since January 2025, and roughly 80% have been flagged as late. Man, you will not comply with our government. You'll run our government, but you will not abide by the rules. I don't know what else to say. I mean, are you setting a good example for all of us? No, not really. I mean, it is what it is. What am I going to do? Cry that he has more money than me? It's all relative. That's what I tell myself to sleep at night. Trump stock trades. Trump stock trades. Trump stock trades. Meta, meta, meta. Next topic. Oh, shit. You want to do meta? You want to do the edda? You want to do the weta? Meta, meta, meta. Okay, Meta has just agreed to pay up to $18 billion and fundamentally change how Facebook and Instagram operate for anyone under 18. Finally, everyone's banning under 16 social media around the world. Now, the proposed settlement resolves lawsuits brought by nearly every U.S. state and territory. They accused Meta of deliberately designing addictive products, misleading the public about the risks to children, and collecting data from some users under 13 without parental permission. Meta denies wrongdoing, and the agreement still requires court approval. But if it is approved, teenagers will automatically receive a 2-hour combined daily limit across Facebook and Instagram. Both apps will be blocked between midnight and 6 a.m., and notifications will be silenced during school hours. You know what I have to say about that ruling? You should do that with every platform. You can't just do it with Facebook and Instagram, because if you do, not only will these teenagers find a way to circumvent it anyway, they just will find a way. But if you allow TikTok and YouTube, which to me is just another form of social media, WhatsApp, if you allow the other apps to do it, which is also Meta owned, aren't we just giving them the loophole? We're not really closing any gap for them. Now, parents can override some restrictions, but teenagers cannot simply turn them off themselves. Meta must also strengthen its age detection systems, provide teenagers with a non-personalized feed, restrict visible like counts, and remove cosmetic surgery filters for minors. An independent auditor will monitor whether Meta complies. Wow. That's how crazy it's gotten, y'all. Because it's super serious. I mean, there are kids that have zero self-esteem. There are kids that are committing suicide. There are kids that are depressed. And if we're doing this to them when they're 15, 13, 16 years old, aren't we just wrecking their future selves? Aren't we just wrecking their future lives? About damn time. The financial structure is unusual. Meta must pay approximately $12.7 billion over 10 years. Another $5 billion becomes payable if competitors, including TikTok, YouTube, and Snapchat, adopt comparable protections. Additional privacy settlements bring Meta's total total potential cost to approximately $18 billion. This is much bigger than another fine. State governments are effectively establishing a bedtime and screen time limit for American teenagers. And honestly, I understand it. We already restrict what children can purchase, where they can go, and what substances they can consume. Why should a product intentionally designed to hold their attention for hours receive completely different treatment? But here's the kicker. How does Meta reliably determine who is 15 and who is 25? Can't you just lie? Does protecting children require every adult to upload identification or allow an app to scan their face? So even more of our privacy we do away with. And then you could kind of look at this as paradoxical, because if the parents can override these protections, should the government be establishing the limit, or should the parents? Now, I think the default restrictions make sense. 2 hours is a ton of social media. We're just wasting our lives away. But age verification could create an entirely new privacy problem while attempting to solve the first one. Meta. All right, next topic. We got another Meta one. Meta, you trying to fire people? Damn. Meta reportedly tried to transform itself into an AI native company by allowing artificial intelligence to perform work previously handled by thousands of employees. According to a Reuters investigation, the internal effort was called Project OT. The plan called for AI agents to handle routine tasks, employees to work in smaller groups, and some teams to become as much as 60% smaller. Executives believe top employees equipped with AI could perform the work of much larger teams. Meta eliminated roughly 10% of its workforce in May, nearly 8,000 positions, and reportedly planned another company-wide round of reductions later in the year. But that second round was canceled. The AI tools reportedly created technical problems, interrupted established workflows, and failed to deliver the expected productivity improvements. Employee morale also collapsed as workers feared that helping Meta train its AI systems could eventually eliminate their own positions. Meta has not abandoned AI. The company is expected to spend approximately $130 billion on AI infrastructure this year. But its public message has shifted toward AI helping employees rather than immediately replacing them. What do we think is going to happen? Y'all, I've been saying this before AI even became a thing. I was like, I don't even know why I have a job. And I'm an IT project manager. They could have replaced me 15 years ago. Now, do you have to have a personal touch to it? Yeah. Employee morale matters. Testing matters. Engineering a solution matters. However, you could automate a lot of this. You just need some verification in the process along the way. Do I think this is the right thing to do? Absolutely not. If I'm the CEO of Meta or any other company, no. Find us a way to add to the bottom line. That's your responsibility. You shouldn't just be firing people. I don't believe in Jack Welch theory, which is you take the bottom 10% of your organization that isn't performing, isn't productive, and you replace them. You see what you could do with 90%, or you get another 10%. And you keep cutting at the bottom just to make yourselves more efficient as a corporation, as a company. I don't believe in that. Find a way through retraining, through imagination, find a way to make your employees productive. There is a way. Put them on different teams, have them create on their own. You can give them targets and incentives behind those targets. Listen, you have been non-revenue generating your entire career. You could be telling that to an employee. I need you to find a way to make money. Your job's not on the line. You're completely safe, but I need you to find a way to make money. Use AI, use whatever tool is at your disposal, whatever you need. But this is the area that I want you to work in, and I want you to enhance this side of the business, make us more profitable, make us more efficient. You don't have to fire people. You really don't. And especially the way we're going, I mean, this is why they're talking about applying an AI tax. Because what are you going to do? Do you really want us to do a lot more with less? Do you know what would happen to the economy? It would go to shit. We're not going to create more money. There's not going to be enough people. This is a consumer-led economy. 70% of our gross domestic product comes from us spending. If we don't have jobs, I don't give a shit what you think about the stock market. Your thesis will have no legs. It would be impossible to sustain ourselves. So there's no way you can be happy about this as an American. Not only are your friends and family members going to find it more challenging to find a job, but to have it be replaced by AI, there's got to be a responsibility that falls on the CEOs, on the people in charge. And this is one of the clearest real-world tests we have seen. Meta is spending $130 billion on AI just this year. And apparently could not make the replacement strategy work as quickly as executives expected. That's why they had to backtrack on these plans. Here's a question. Why were the employees removed before the technology proved that it could actually perform their jobs? We're shooting first and asking questions later, which is okay with me. That's how you create good products. But there are people's lives hanging in the balance here. I think there's a much more responsible way to do this. All of the corporations are constantly telling us that AI will create efficiency. I think it is. But you have to prove it in the mechanics, in the processes within the corporation. And I think once you replace those processes with automation, with AI agents, yeah, you could probably let people go. I'm not happy to hear that. In all likelihood, AI is going to replace enormous amounts of office work and physical labor. But this demonstrates the difference between an impressive chatbot demonstration and software reliably operating inside a complicated organization every day. Because all of that esoteric information, that can't just walk out of the door. I'm not saying that I could contend with AI, but there are a lot of intricacies in any one person's job. And it's going to take a lot longer than you think to train a robot or an AI agent to do that job the same way. Because Meta just eliminated 8,000 salaries on a spreadsheet, and they're going to save that money. But they have to replace the knowledge, judgment, the coordination of those 8,000 people. And that's just not cut and dry. I also think it's rather immoral and unfair. I don't think it's the right thing to do by your everyday. I don't think it's the right thing to do by your fellow citizen. I mean, they can certainly afford it. They're a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm not saying that they shouldn't get lean. I'm not saying that they should make a sacrifice here, per se. But they kind of are, and they kind of should. Because they can withstand having that additional 8,000 employees. And I'm sure with some ingenuity, some creative thinking, they could repurpose those individuals and have them add to revenue, have them add to the bottom line, have them create. I mean, are we really going to live in a world where we're just saying, hey, AI can do everything, everyone's out of a job? I don't know how that world is going to exist. I think we're working towards that right now. I don't know how the stock market doesn't go to damn near zero in that scenario. And also, more importantly, most importantly, what happens to all of us? I'm not crying about it. I'm not going to sit here and be, AI is going to come after. It's going to take our jobs. It already is. I'm just asking, we have the ability to steer our futures. Are we just going to let the richest people in the room, we happen to believe what the rich people say? Are we going to believe all of these CEOs, all of the rich people in the room, and just say, yeah, AI is the future. Yeah, it's going to take all of our jobs. Okay. And then we just get to this dystopian world, this apocalyptic world where all of us are not working. The government refuses to give us money at that point. What the hell are we doing? Most people are defined. Most people have their sense of purpose defined, or have a part of it defined by their work. Do I think that's right? I mean, that's another story, but to each his own. Can you imagine a world where we have, I don't know, 50, 60, 80% unemployment? What kind of world is that? Especially for the United States. I can't imagine that. Like, I think we would be in a lot of trouble, because economically, I don't know how we wouldn't be in a depression, worse than a depression. That's why there has to be some creative thinking here by our leaders and by everyone involved, right? By who we vote for, of course, to say, yeah, we're going to have AI. This AI displacement theory is true. What are we going to do about it? We know the robots are coming. We know that physical labor will be subsidized. We know that a lot of the office work can be supplanted. But we also know that people have to work to live. What are we going to do about that? Thank you for watching. See you next time.